Digging her feet into the ground as she leaped forward, Tess used a mana vine to pull herself toward the nearest enemy mage. The surprised Alacrian didn't even have time to turn before her sword staff sank deep into his hip. Blood rolled off, leaving the pale blade spotless as she pulled it free. "Tessia, duck!" Karya shouted. Tess dove under a swinging axe and rolled clear of its reach. By the time she was on her feet again, Karya had dropped from her perch in the tree above, landing on the Alacrian and driving a gauntleted fist into his skull. To her left, Stannard was falling back before an Alacrian striker, but a windblade targeted at the striker's unprotected legs dropped him with ease. "Thank you!" Stannard shouted. With his artifact charged, he unleashed a blast of mana directly at an approaching group of enemy soldiers. Darvis came into view, his dual axes carving trails of fire through the mist as they cut through both flesh and steel. "We can't let them get past this point," Tess reminded them as Karya leapt into action beside Darvis, her gauntlets wrapped in thick mana. "We can do this," she reassured herself, watching her teammates fight alongside the second unit of mages. Hachi, one of the new recruits, stood out even from a distance, a head taller than everyone else, his fists blazing with brilliant flames. Suddenly, a bright beam of ice lanced down from a nearby tree. Karya and Hachi dodged, but an elf from his team wasn't so fortunate. "Damn it," Tess cursed. Watching the elf, she couldn't even tell who, slumped to the ground, lifeless. Infusing her legs with mana, she leapt into the tree from which the ice beam had originated. Before the caster could finish another spell, her sword staff pierced to the heart. The body slumped and fell from the tree. From the tree, Tess surveyed the battlefield below, checking for any other enemy conjurers hiding nearby. Chaos reigned. She couldn't get an accurate count of her men, nor discern where the enemy forces were moving. Despite the difficulty navigating the battlefield, she knew the situation was far worse for the enemy. Without the fog, their small force would likely have been crushed within minutes. A piercing scream cut through the din. It came from nearby. Not knowing whether it was friend or foe, Tess whirled toward the source. It was an elf. The leather apron with a metal sheet clumsily attached to the chest, most likely a baking pan, marked him as a civilian who had stayed to defend his town. He crumpled lifelessly to the ground, a puddle of blood spreading beneath him. The killer was an Alacrian mage, his open hands surrounded by a spinning ring of wind. He sneered proudly as he trampled the elf's body. Tess's blood burned at the sight. Landing deftly on the ground, she sprinted toward the enemy, fully intent on removing him from the battle. "Tessia, where are you going?" Darvis hollered from behind. "I'll be right back," she called, not bothering to look back. Tess's vision narrowed onto the enemy mage as she cleared the distance between them with ease. Just as she was about to drive her blade into his back, a golden pane of light flickered into being between them. Her strike shattered the barrier, but it bought the mage enough time to scramble out of her path. "Sneaky little elven bitch," the enemy mage spat. The whirling blades of wind around his hands grew larger as he prepared to strike. "You'll pay for the elven blood you've spilt with your life," Tess replied coldly, unleashing the first phase of her beast will. Shield!" he screamed, sprinting toward his guard. Golden light flickered into existence, but before it could fully manifest, the sharp tendrils of mana surrounding Tess pierced through both mages, punching several holes into their bodies. Having defeated the enemy mages, Tess's gaze was drawn to the dead elf beside her. His empty eyes seemed to stare back, blaming her. "I can do this," she repeated through gritted teeth. "Tessia, we need you back," Karya called. It took a moment for Tess to spot her through the fog. Karya was facing a group of 3 Alacrians. Her expression was grim, but she held her ground even against 3 enemy mages. "I'll be right there," Tess shouted. Augmenting her sight, she peered through the layer of fog, searching for any of the so-called shields hiding nearby. Taking out a shield would seriously weaken the attackers, since they appeared unable to defend themselves with magic. She spotted a shield conjuring a panel of light around 2 other Alacrians, but before she could engage him, an enemy mage charged. Tess easily dodged his flame-clad spear and carved a bloody line through his neck. Turning back to the shield, she spotted another ally in need of help. A human soldier had been backed against a tree by two enemy mages who were closing in. Her main task was to reinforce her teammates and stop the Alacrian advance, but every fallen soldier made that task more difficult. With a flick of her wrist, roots shot up from beneath the two Alacrians, anchoring their feet to the ground. Compressing the air around her sword staff, Tess cast Wind Cutter, launching a translucent crescent of wind at the immobilized mages. An earthen wall burst from the ground, intercepting Tess's spell. By the time she darted around the barrier, the human soldier was already on the ground, a frozen spike protruding from her chest. She cursed inwardly, angered at herself for being too late. Meanwhile, the enemy mages freed themselves from the grasping roots and readied their next attack, this time aimed at her. With a manic cry, one mage dashed toward her, his entire right arm enveloped in a lance of ice. The emerald vines of mana surrounding Tess like an aura knocked aside his attack and plunged into his stomach and chest, killing him instantly. The second Alacrian conjured a stone barrier around himself, forming a small dome, clearly hoping for rescue before she could break through. With a snarl, Tess summoned roots and vines from the earth beneath the dome, and she could hear his screams resonating dully within. More and more plants filled the hollow space, threatening to crush him if he didn't release his spell. Moments later, the screams cut off, and the barrier began to crumble, revealing the Alacrian's broken body. Tess's gaze shifted to her fallen ally, still slumped against the nearby tree. She cursed again. She needed to take down more of the enemy's mages. The more she eliminated, the better her allies' chances became. That was her duty. The emerald aura surrounding her lashed outward, forming translucent vines that whipped, wrapped, and pierced any enemy who came too close. Tess realized that, while in the first phase of her beast will, her most effective method of attack was simply to close the distance to the enemy mages. Even the shield's magical barriers proved ineffective. The emerald vines flowed over, under, and around them faster than the defenses could be adjusted. She sprinted from one cluster of enemies to the next, darting into their midst, often before they even realized she was there, and letting the vines do their work. While the forest hindered many, the endless rows of trees worked to her advantage. The emerald vines of mana not only protected her and struck down her foes, but every tree around her seemed to answer her call, concealing her presence as she moved through the battlefield. From somewhere in the fog, Tess heard a man shout, "Focus on the gray-haired girl." Seconds later, a condensed beam of fire shot down from the top of a tree. Rather than dodge and risk hitting her allies, she waved her sword staff, channeling a spell through the mana-amplifying gem on its hilt. Thick roots shot up from the ground beneath her feet, sacrificing themselves to block the fire. Thankfully, the fog made it hard for the flames to spread, she thought, as the burned roots withered away. The thought of the entire Elshire forest burning sent a shiver down her spine. "Head Tessia!" A desperate cry rang out nearby. Whipping around, Tess saw Hachi lying on the ground just a dozen yards away, his hand reaching out for her. A bullish Alacrian loomed over him, swinging a stone hammer. A sick jolt hit her stomach as the hammer crushed Hachi's skull. His arm fell limply to the ground, crimson spreading in a red halo around what had been her ally's head. "No!" Tess yelled, seething with rage. But before she could reach the man to vent her fury, a glowing axe struck, separating the Alacrian's head from his neck. Darvis appeared behind the Alacrian's corpse, his eyes fierce. "Are you out of your mind? Why the hell did you break formation and go off on your own like that?" "It's not like that," Tess retorted. "I was saving our troops." "Yeah," he scoffed. "You were supposed to be in position to back Hachi and his team up. You were supposed to be keeping him alive." Tess shook her head, her face burning with anger and regret. "You don't understand. We all had our positions assigned, positions you assigned," he snapped, cutting her off. "Because you ran off, two others are critically injured and their right flank is completely exposed. In what world is that saving our troops?" Shaking his head, Darvis dashed off, unleashing his anger on the unfortunate enemies nearby. Tess wanted to explain, wanted him to understand, so she started after him. But then a searing pain spread across her back. The protective aura from her beast will seem to have shielded her from the worst of it, and the damage felt minimal. But it still hurt like hell, whatever it was. If the attack had been stronger, she could have died, the realization hitting her like a bucket of cold water. The promise she had made to her teammates, the promise she had made with Arthur, would have been broken because she had been caught up in trying to play the hero, trying to do everything herself. Snap out of it, Tessia. Darvis is right. We need to stay in formation. Tess headed back toward her initial position, pouring more mana into the emerald aura protecting her. The enemy seemed to be struggling to keep their own troops in formation, and the forest was full of small groups of Alacrian soldiers charging recklessly through the trees. Turning into a whirlwind of blade and magic, she fought through several of these groups, but they were vastly outnumbered, and more enemies bypassed their small blockade with each passing moment. She could only hope that General Aya's army would deal with them, and that the elven refugees had made it far from the battlefield. Damn it! Where are the others? She cursed, straining to locate Stannard, Karia, and Darvis. Tess couldn't tell how much time had passed since the battle began, but one thing was painfully clear. She wasn't fit to be a leader. The guilt she felt manifested as a voice in her head, constantly reminding her that she had led every one of her allies into danger. It didn't matter that she was a silver core mage with an S-class beast will. Getting emotional over each death revealed that she wasn't capable of making rational decisions for the good of the whole. A leader had to be calculating, to understand when sacrifice was necessary. Shaking the voice from her mind, Tess continued toward her initial position. Finally, she spotted Stannard a few dozen yards away. "Stannard!" she yelled, hoping the conjurer could hear her over the chaos. However, Tess's voice drew someone else's attention. A human clad in black armor, his long blonde hair billowing around him. He rode a corrupted, wolf-like beast and was flanked by guards far more skilled than the Alacrian soldiers she had faced so far. He looks important, she thought, channeling more mana into her beast will as she braced herself. "Leave the girl to me," he commanded, and his guards immediately stepped back, lowering their weapons. Tess kept her expression impassive as the man dismounted and strode toward her. His black armor was a finely crafted mix of plate and chainmail. At his waist hung two ornate swords, their hilts embedded with jewels. He unsheathed them. "As expected of Tessia Aerolith, to barely have any wounds. It's an honor to meet you like this." Keeping her sword staff trained on him, Tess took a cautious step forward. "How do you know my name?" He smiled politely. "You can call me Vernet." The translucent green vines thrashed wildly around Tess, mirroring her frustration and anger. She hated when they talked. Both of them knew what had to happen here. Words wouldn't change the fact that this man wanted to undo her entire way of life, reduce her home to ash, and build a war machine atop the charred remains. "You didn't answer my question," she growled, letting her tone carry the weight of a threat. Vernet shrugged as he assumed a fighting stance. "Perhaps beating me in combat might make me talk. After all, you Decathians seem to love interrogation." "If that's how you want to play it," Tess thought. She launched herself at the Alacrian, closing the distance before he could properly react. Mana tendrils snaked out from her, striking at his exposed face. But as they neared him, they slowed drastically, stopping entirely before they could connect. Looking smug, Vernet swung his blade almost lazily, and Tess easily dodged back. She followed up with her sword staff, but it felt as if she were swinging through thick, viscous liquid. By the time her blade reached Vernet's unprotected neck, it moved so slowly that it couldn't even draw blood. The battle continued, but they were at a stalemate. Tess was clearly stronger, faster, and more skilled in combat, but because of his unique variant of defensive magic, she couldn't land a solid hit and was forced to move constantly, which carried them into the midst of other skirmishes. A soldier in a silver breastplate, one of her own, lunged at the Alacrian just as Tess launched a crescent of wind. Heedless of the soldier's blade, Vernet jerked him into the path of her spell, using him like a shield. The man's chest erupted in blood as his silver armor was cleaved open by the wind blade. His eyes, wide with shock, locked onto Tess in terror and disbelief before his head drooped lifelessly to his chest. "Bastard!" she roared, dashing toward Vernette, her blade thrust out like a spear. Laughing, he hurled the body he had used as a shield at her, forcing her to dodge as he backed into an ongoing struggle between an elven augmenter and an Alacrian striker. "You're nothing but an infant wearing a shiny badge," he gloated, slicing off the leg of the elven soldier, deliberately leaving him alive and writhing in agony. "Shut up!" Tess yelled. The emerald vines surged with power as she channeled more mana into them, extending up toward the trees and cutting down 2 Alacrian casters before crashing down on the striker, who had turned to flee. With no more obvious targets nearby, Vernette halted his slow retreat and waited for Tess to strike. Her vines bore down on him, writhing in a mass of emerald green, but they couldn't touch him. Playfully, he batted each one aside with his sword. "You should have kept the tiara on your head, little princess. Leading with a sword doesn't suit you." "Shut up, shut up, shut up!" Tess screamed. Succumbing to her rage, she activated the second stage of her beast will, and the world around her turned green. Her body moved almost on its own through the verdant mists, the battle around her falling into sudden quiet. The cocksure Alacrian flinched back, finally showing concern, but it was too late. Tess reached out, and a translucent green hand shot from her aura, grabbing Vernette while the surrounding trees twisted to form a cage. "Call off your troops," she demanded, her voice thick with power. Vernette coughed up blood. She could feel his ribs cracking through her magic, yet he still smiled. "What troops?" Looking around, panic simmered just beneath the surface, suppressed only by Tess's beast will. She realized they were alone. The battle had moved on, or she had been drawn away, led from the heart of the conflict. She could sense her troops falling without her guidance, more bodies littering the forest floor with every passing moment. Through her beast will, she felt their lives, and their deaths. There were so few defenders left now, because of her. Because she had allowed this man to manipulate her, to isolate her, to pull her away from where she was needed most. "I'm happy you think so highly of me, but like yourself, I'm merely a distinguished soldier," Vernette gurgled, blood leaking from the corners of his mouth. "The difference between us is that, unlike you, I know I'm only pretending to be a leader." Tess's vision swam as her emotions surged. Anger, frustration, disappointment, regret, guilt. It was almost a relief when a piercing pain tore through her chest, giving her something solid to focus on, forcing her thoughts away. She found herself staring up at the forest canopy, her body unresponsive, unbearably cold. Vernette's pained yet arrogant expression drifted into view as he looked down at her. What had happened? Another enemy mage? Vernette clicked his tongue in disapproval. "You were so short-sighted that you couldn't see what was right in front of you, could you?" Tess closed her eyes, waiting to die, wishing that so many others hadn't had to perish because of her poor decisions. It wouldn't be so bad, she thought, if it were just her. A horn blared in the distance. When she opened her eyes, Vernette was gone. She heard leaves crunching as someone approached. A face appeared above her, looking down with an expression so cold that she almost wished she had died. "General Aya." Compared to the speed with which his thoughts and worries flew through Art's mind, their flight to the forest of Elshire felt agonizingly slow. When he wasn't glancing back toward the beast army, nearly overwhelmed with guilt at leaving the troops and his family behind at the wall, his focus was fixed on the bright path of mana that carved a road straight toward what he suspected was the heart of the Elenoir kingdom. "What sort of spell is capable of such a thing?" his bond asked as they followed the markers, which shone even through the thick layer of fog blanketing the forest below. He wasn't entirely sure, But seeing how the trail zigzagged around various points leading north, he doubted it was a single powerful spell. It seemed more like an accumulation of the same spell, layered repeatedly to create a path. It was only speculation, more hope than certainty. The thought of an enemy mage capable of nullifying the ambient magic of the forest with a single conjuration sent a chill through him, and he urged Sylvie to fly just a bit faster. It was already unbearable to think that something might happen to his family, or one of the twin horns, but the fear of not reaching Tess in time left him sick and clammy. After another hour scouring the forest, following the crooked path of mana that marked the way through Elshire, Art finally spotted signs of a battle in the distance. Mana fluctuations were visible even above the thick canopy of trees below them, but they were old. The fighting had already ended, and from this distance, it was impossible to tell which side had emerged victorious. Sensing the shift in his emotions, Sylvie dove closer to the forest, rapidly approaching the location Art had imprinted into their shared awareness. As they neared the battleground, however, a figure hovering above the blanket of trees and fog caught their attention. Art felt Sylvie's fear and anxiety bleed into him as she halted more than 50 feet away, before transforming into her human form. He had already suspected who, or what, it was when he noticed that the floating figure carried no mana signature. But seeing the familiar silhouette up close, clad in black armor with a purple cloak billowing behind him, confirmed it. Compared to the oppressive tidal wave that was Uto, this man was the eye of a terrible storm, just like his master. "Silrit," Art said simply. "Lance." Despite his impatience, Art exchanged a glance with Sylvie, who already had mana coalescing around her in preparation for a fight. He was at a loss. His instincts urged him to fight. Silrit was an enemy. But at the same time, the scythe he served had saved Art's life, and was the reason Sylvie and he had been able to advance past their respective bottlenecks. "Are we to fight?" Art asked, hesitant despite himself. "I have been instructed to keep you from advancing further," Silrit replied simply, his expression unchanged. "And if I were to say that I have to advance?" Art demanded, preparing to release Realmheart once again. Silrit's sharp eyes narrowed, but his voice remained calm. He said it was for Art's benefit. His master wished to keep him in optimal health for the final battle, but taking part in the defense of the Elven Kingdom could make that difficult. "Cirrus said this was for my benefit?" Art said, surprised. Silrit warned him not to speak his master's name so casually. Though his voice did not change, a sharp bloodlust surged from him at the mention of the scythe. Matching the pressure Silrit emanated with his own, Art glowered down at him as he spoke. "Watch your tone, Silrit. I chose to exchange words with you out of courtesy toward your master." "Courtesy?" The Vritra's expression darkened. "Master Sarah saved your life. I suggest you heed her words and clean up the mess you've abandoned back at your fortress, as intended." "We're going to Elenoir," Art stated firmly, his eyes never leaving Silrit's. "Knowing how to sacrifice is a part of war," Silrit said, his tone calm once again. "Wasting your efforts here won't help you, even if you manage to succeed in defending Elenoir." "You think I don't know that?" Art growled, unable to hold back. The wind stilled, and the air grew so thick it was almost tangible. Beside him, Art could feel the worry from his bond, but in that moment, he didn't care. He had already sacrificed lives at the wall by making this journey, and he couldn't let that sacrifice be in vain. A lecture on the necessities of war from a creature that could still turn out to be his enemy would not dissuade him. The Vritra's brows furrowed in frustration. "Go back, Lance. If you want even a chance of saving Dickathan, you should worry about bigger things." Art flew forward until he was face to face with the Vritra. "Move aside, Silrit. You're mistaken if you think you can keep us both here. A lot has changed since our fight against Uto." Cirrus's retainer held out his arm, and a thick black fog swirled around his outstretched hand, manifesting into a pitch-black greatsword nearly as long as he was tall. "Very well," Silrit said. "If you insist on fighting, allow me to prove you wrong." Art, Sylvie, and Silrit hovered above the canopy of trees. He gripped Dawn's ballad tightly, weighing his options, none of them appealing. Despite Sylvie's recent growth, she couldn't handle Silrit alone, and she still hadn't located Tess in the magical fog blanketing Elshire Forest. The fastest solution was to end the fight quickly, but expending too much energy now could weaken him for the battles still to come. Sylvie, I'm pretty confident I can beat Silrit on my own, but if his goal is to stall, an extended fight works in his favor. Let's finish this, together. Even at full speed, executing his sharp, precise movements in midair was difficult. I agree, Sylvie confirmed, mana already coalescing around her at an extraordinary rate. A solid panel of condensed mana formed beneath Art's feet, giving him a platform to fight from. Silrit remained expressionless, lifting his great sword into a defensive stance as Art closed the distance. He focused on a point 3 paces in front of Silrit, while Sylvie conjured another translucent panel beneath his right foot, allowing for a rapid change in direction. Silrit's eyes calmly followed his movements, his sword steady. Dawn's ballad whistled through the air towards Silrit's chest, but the teal blade jerked off course, clashing against the retainer's pitch-black greatsword. It felt as though Dawn's ballad were being pulled by an invisible hand into the massive weapon. The pull vanished after the clash, but as soon as Art swung again, the same force yanked his blade towards Silrit's sword. Frustration mounting, he activated the first phase of his beast will. Static Void. The world inverted around Art, freezing everything but himself in place. He pressed the broken tip of Dawn's ballad into a gap in Silrit's motionless armor, then released the spell. Even at point-blank range, his sword veered off, barely nicking the retainer and leaving Art drained. Damn it, he thought, grinding his teeth. Sylvie reacted instantly, conjuring another platform beneath his feet, letting him quickly put distance between himself and Silrit. His breathing came in ragged gasps. Static Void was a spell passed down from Sylvia, but it relied on manipulating Evum, a force incompatible with his mastery of ether. Even as a white core mage, using it for any extended period was exhausting. I was taught of the various mana arts forged by the Asura clans, including the ether arts of the Indrath clan. Experiencing it firsthand, though, I can see why it's feared, Silrit said, glancing down at the minor wound. Art ignored the words, nudging his bond mentally. Sylvie, fire a few shots behind him. Got it. Just as arrows of mana formed in the air behind Silrit, Art unleashed a blast of frost and a bolt of lightning. The ice spread into a wide cone while the lightning arced to cover the retainer, but the attacks were absorbed without effect. With a single sweep of his black greatsword, Silrit devoured both spells completely. Sylvie snorted in irritation. What a troublesome ability. If you're enjoying this series, please give the video a like. It really helps others discover it. And if you'd like to see more, consider subscribing to the channel. Want the next chapter? Comment next chapter below.